On today's show, we are asking the question, is resilience actually inspiring, or are we just used to saying, good job? Mom's here. Let's. Hello, everybody. My name is Rob. This is Karen, my mom, and we are Books, Banter, and Beyond. And today we're talking about a theme that comes up in the greatest stories ever told, resilience. But the question that came to mind, because I think I just read a lot of books, is it really inspirational anymore?
Hmm.
Or are we just used to clapping for the winner of the story, right?
Yeah.
This will probably get us in trouble. No, I'm just kidding. Um, so I thought we'd break down a few things as to when it works, when it doesn't, and then just kind of follow up with, our main thoughts. So when does it actually work? Resilience seems to work when it's obviously done genuinely well, which for anything, I would say, right?
Right.
We're thinking characters like Frodo in Lord of the Rings or Katniss in the Hunger Games. Neither of them are necessarily happy at the end of their story. However, you can tell that they have grown in terms of what happened from the events that they had to do. So, for instance, if
Hmm.
you read The Hunger Games, obviously there was a lot of death in that book. However, she and her partner at the time survived, so she came out on top because she's still around.
Right.
Frodo had to go through all of these trials. A lot of his friends were killed, a lot of
Right.
other people were, but he got rid of the ring, and everything seems to be back to normal, at least for the moment.
Right.
So that seems to me when it works better. A psychologist by the name of Angela Duckworth has actually spent years researching this and basically narrows it down to one word, grit, which is the combination of passion and long term perseverance. So, a resilient character is someone who really, really loves what they are fighting for and also has the strength to go all the way to the finale.
Right.
Um, so do you agree with that then? Do you think the best characters are those who can persevere, or do you think resilience is a whole different ballgame in terms of definition for you?
No, I think persevere. I mean, I can think of an example, where that would fall in. Would you like an example that I can think?
Sure, yes.
Gone with the Wind, Scarlett O'Hara. She
Okay.
persevered. Her, if you remember the story, it's during Civil War. Entire properties were burned to the ground. Hers was just almost destroyed, but she persevered. And literally, she says, I'll worry about it tomorrow. That's literally a line in the book. And she keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Is she a likable character? Not really. She's not even a likable character, but she perseveres. And I think she's the epitome of somebody who keeps on going.
So this actually then brings to the second question. Do you think that the character who is resilient needs to suffer convincingly for you or I or whoever to actually matter or to feel like it matters? Or do you think someone can just,
No, I
because
think
that's a
it,
good example right
yeah,
there of what you just gave
yeah,
of
yeah.
losing it or almost losing it and then basically not caring and just continuing on with whatever she's doing. So
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't know.
I don't think, I think convincingly is kind of a weird word, but at the same time, I do understand why this would be a good question because, yeah, the character needs to go through it for me to feel like it matters, but
Right.
they have to go through it in a way that is actually, I guess, realistic and not
And you
just
can that you can not just it's emotionally feel it, like you're there with them. It's not just a bunch of words on a page, right?
exactly.
It has to emote.
So, right. So when does it become obvious or kind of the, you know, bunny ears. Um, there's a version that shows up called the plot bounce, which basically character does X, character reflects on X, character gets up in the next chapter, character keeps on going. and you kind of repeat that over and over again.
Right.
Now, granted, I mean, and we've talked about how genres work. Most books are written exactly the same way back to back. So, a fantasy is written as a fantasy, a science fiction written as science fiction. So, of course, you're going to go into a book of a genre and you're going to see identical doings and identical characteristics because
Right.
that's how it works.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that the author needs to copy word for word how the
Right.
story goes, and that's where it becomes less, I don't know, yay for you and more,
Right.
oh, okay, I've heard this way too many times before.
Right.
For me, it kind of loses the meaning of resilience when I look at it, I read the chapter, I read the story, and then I go, well, I probably could have done that myself, or I probably
Mhm.
need to actually read that story
Right. Right.
because it
Right.
was that obvious to me.
Right.
Thoughts?
Yeah. I don't read a lot of books like this where, well, I mean, all those romance things that I read that are in a series that, the
Mhm.
person does, um, you know, persist and she has challenges and then she comes out of it. But it never makes me feel, those kind of books never makes me feel like I am her, or it's not me. But the other example is in your face, Gone with the Wind. It's in your face. She literally, you can just see the struggle, the fires, and the whole, her entire house. She's pulling draperies down to make dresses. Feel like the song Sound of Music, remember? Where she, but the point is you feel it. Some of this other stuff, you don't feel it. And I think if I don't feel it, it's not, it loses.
Well, author Lisa Cron, who wrote a book called Story, argues that the main problem here is, or in commercial fiction, is that the characters change where they're at, what they're doing, but not them. And that's the problem with the believing in the resilience. It's one thing to be resilient and actually wake up and realize you're a different individual, but most stories nowadays are more like, okay, well, in order for me to survive, I have to move from place A to place B. Now I'm going to survive. Yay for me. And you leave the reader with, well, that's not interesting because anybody could have thought of that idea
Mhm.
when you expected to give you something more detailed.
Right.
So it's so what does good resilience teach us? This is how we'll kind of wrap it up. Good resilience doesn't entertain you, it models something. And I think you said a few moments ago about the emotion of it. Studies in bibliotherapy, that is actually reading and mental health support, have found that readers who connected with struggling characters who persevered reported higher feelings versus characters that didn't do much. But it wasn't because the story was a good, strong story. It was because the character felt more like them. And that was the biggest difference. So the story itself might have been a very bad story,
Right.
but the individuals reading it said, hey, character A is me. Character A did this. So theoretically, so can I.
So would this also go along with biographies and autobiographies of people who have persevered? And it makes you, where they're talking, and because I'm thinking about some books right now, that have made me feel stronger and that have made me feel like, like Becoming Michelle Obama. Some of these books where they've gone through their trials and tribulations, and they've persevered. And it makes me feel like, stronger. Maybe I could do that too. Well, I know I could do that too, but you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I mean, I think it'd be the same thing. I think in that case, it's even more realistic because it's not a fiction, it's a story of them.
Right.
So you actually can read page by page what they were at one point, what they became, where they're going, all that stuff. So yes, I think theoretically a memoir, a biography, what have you, could easily be just as powerful, if not more,
Yeah.
because you are actually seeing things that you as an individual could do in
And they're
real life
true.
instead of
And
pretending to be in a
it's not,
fantasy
yeah,
world
and
or a
it's true, where in some of these other books that we were just discussing, it's fiction. And so there's something to be said for the nonfiction versus fiction, the truth, the actual story where it actually happened. I mean, it happened versus the not the fiction book, Lord of the Rings, whatever we're talking about, Gone with the Wind. maybe the idea happened like the Civil War, but the actual thing, we can't really get into it because we don't know that person from Adam, and it was made up. It's a made up story, right?
Right, exactly. So I think my final point will be I think resilience is a good topic, but I think it does need to be emotionally connected
Yes.
for it to actually work. Otherwise, you basically just have a campy, what do they call
Right.
those mystery thrillers, the 50 Cent ones,
Um,
or just basically a quick story and then
yeah,
you go
go
home and
right
you're done.
now. Go away and say next. As we
Exactly.
always say at the end of the show, go check out the Next Chapter Bookstore dot shop. Lots and lots and lots of books in there, gently used. Go support the bookstore. We will be grateful. And Rob, you got to say your last thing. We always end the show with.
Go read a book.